I have with me today Houston Barnes from Barnes Law. One of the things I always tell my clients is have a franchise attorney look over your franchise agreements, your franchise disclosure documents. Very important. If nothing else, just to know what are you getting yourself into before you sign those agreements, because those are long-term agreements. So Houston, when people are starting out, what is your process? Walk me through what you take people through to look over those agreements.
Perfect. First of all, thanks for having me here today, Greg. So as you look into getting into franchising, you are looking at usually 10, 20, 30 years into the future. You are signing an agreement that hopefully, if things go well, is going to be worth millions of dollars. So this agreement, the franchise disclosure document, this is going to be the tent poles for some of you for the rest of your life. So it's very important that we take a look at that. I can tell you this is what my specialty is. And let me start off with this disclaimer. If you're going to hire an attorney to help you with franchising, hire someone who is a franchise expert, someone who knows franchising. This is a very specialized area of the law, and you would not want to hire someone who's good at traffic accidents to help you with a divorce. You would want a good divorce attorney. And so the same thing goes with this. Hire someone who knows franchising. Last year, I did over 150 deals in franchising alone, reviewing, negotiating franchise agreements. So this is an area that I'm very familiar with. So the Federal Trade Commission is who governs franchise agreements, and they require that every franchise give you a franchise disclosure document. So the franchise disclosure document is essentially two pieces. It's a disclosure aspect followed by the agreement. And the disclosure aspect by the Federal Trade Commission is intended to break down the agreement into layman's terms so anyone can understand it. The truth is, when it comes to it, it is a very dense, very complicated document, and most people need help to even get through the disclosure aspect. Sure. So as you look at the next 10, 20, 30 years of your life, bring in an attorney. I would say about half the time we can help you change some things, help you massage some of the terms, get you a little bit better deal. Half the times the franchisors are pretty strict on what they have presented to you. But either way, you need to know what you're getting into. And God forbid things go sideways, then you need to know what the ramifications of that are.
Well, interesting. You mentioned that some things can be negotiated. So are there any things in particular that you find that you can negotiate on a regular basis? And what things can you just absolutely not negotiate?
Look, when it comes to franchising, especially the type of franchises that Greg may be helping you out with, most franchises stick within the rubric of franchising. And so there is kind of a standard way to do things. And as long as the franchise is living within what is kind of the standard way of doing things, there are not major changes to the agreement. You're not looking to redline and to change the way this relationship happens. They want their relationship with you to look like their relationship with every other franchisee. But what we can do is things that make sense to you. Owning a franchise in rural Montana is very different than owning a franchise in downtown New York City, right? So there may be some things with territory, there might be some things with timing that we want to look at. There's also, I look at every single client as a different person and what are their needs. A few weeks ago, I had a client come to me who was opening up an oil change business. They also personally owned a Pepsi distributorship, and they wanted their agreement to say that they were allowed to get free Pepsis to all their clients. I've never seen that before. I will never see that again. But that was what was important to that client, and we were able to get that put in the deal. So I use that as an example that I never know when I get a new client who they are, what they're about, what their specific needs or concerns may be. So when I get someone on board, I really try to get to know them and figure out what we can do to help that particular person.
Fantastic. And you've helped how many people this last year?
Within the past year, we've done over 150 negotiations on different franchise agreements.
So definitely getting someone.
Yeah,
with
this is all I do. I used to do some other areas of the law, but I enjoy this. This is what I'm very good at. If you need a divorce, and if you need traffic tickets, don't come to me. But if you need help from the franchisee side, that's where I am.
That's perfect. That is a lot of franchise agreements to look over, so you know when you see something that looks out of place, shall we say. So get tuned into that right away. Perfect. A lot of people ask me,
Yep.
Greg, how much, if I get into this franchise, how much can I make? So that is one thing we tell them. That is something we cannot say. So what is a good way to tell people in a very nice way that it's just not within the law for me to say how much they can make because of certain trade commission rules?
Yeah, well, first of all, it varies. Again, owning a business in rural Montana, to go back to my earlier analogy, and owning one in downtown New York City are two totally different things. The second thing is that the Federal Trade Commission is very explicit that they want the franchisor to disclose financial aspects of the franchise within the franchise disclosure document and to not go anywhere beyond that. So the financials that you'll see in the franchise disclosure document. The franchisor should not be sharing any financials beyond that. You can call other franchisees and talk to them about what their personal experience is. But from a attorney standpoint, from a consultant standpoint, we can't tell you how much you're going to make. You might do a whole lot better than what other locations do. You might not do quite as well. But it's not our roles, and B, the Federal Trade Commission very much wants us not to try to step into that role.
Good deal. Thank you for that, Houston. Are there any key items in the franchise disclosure documents that candidates should be more attuned to, or do you feel in general every single one of them is just as important as the next?
That's a great question, and you're asking an attorney what part of an agreement is important and what's not. And as an attorney, every single word, every single mark of punctuation is important. Again, the Federal Trade Commission, what they've done is they've said, let's take the franchise agreement and let's do a disclosure aspect to break it down into what are the most important parts and how can they be explained in layman's terms. When it comes to the disclosure part of a franchise disclosure document, really, it's all important. You are looking, again, at a multi-million-dollar deal, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years to the rest of your life. Read through it. If there are parts you don't understand, find someone like me who can help you understand what that says, who can help you understand. They're going to tell you what it's like the months leading up to opening, what it's like the months after you close, and everything in between. So really, this is not a time where you want to skip over things or focus on one thing or another. You're about to run a small business, and one of the things with small businesses is details matter and everything matters. And that is the same with this agreement. Let's take a look at it as a whole and how your personality, and your business are going to fit into it.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Houston. When people are getting into franchises, sometimes they want more than one territory to begin with, and that's a big step for them, especially when they're first getting into that. What I like to tell them is try to maybe start off with one, make sure that it works out. A lot of people just want to go full into it. What's your advice on that as far as getting one territory or more territory? And how do you protect yourself if you're going to just start with one territory, but if somebody comes in and wants an adjacent territory, how do you protect yourself from that so you can scoop that up at a later date?
Yeah. So when you went back to the question of what are some things that are typically negotiated, it is not uncommon to negotiate a right of first refusal.
Mhm.
So to say that when I open this franchise, I'm going to have territory, and territory can be defined by neighborhoods, it can be defined by zip codes, it can be defined by radius. Let's say you just define it by city in this example. You can say that my territory is Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then you can write a first refusal saying if anybody comes within 100 miles of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I get the right of first refusal to take over that territory. It's always my advice. The more pieces you have, the more complicated something is, the more there is to go wrong. It's always my advice to start as simple as possible and to grow from there. It's much easier in business to grow than it is to shrink.
Yeah.
So I think that's good advice to start with one territory. Sometimes there are situations where that just doesn't make sense or where that's not feasible. And there's nothing wrong with starting with 2, 3, 5, 10 different territories. But where practical, where available, it's always easier, in my opinion, to grow than it is to shrink.
I found that as well. In that case, to start off, make sure it works correctly the first time, and then if it does work out, grow from there. Absolutely, because selling off territories later, which I've had to do a few times for folks, not always that simple and easy to do.
Yep.
So, in your
Exactly.
experience, what is your advice to, say, first-time business owners? What do you see the mistakes that are made that they could probably avoid working with you or looking at some other aspects of business what they don't normally would consider?
You know, I'm biased. I'm a franchise attorney, so I see people who come back with problems in the future. I mean, it's like a doctor saying all they see is sick people. Well, that's their job. What I think about is the people who come to me who down the line say, I didn't realize XYZ, or I didn't know XYZ. And 9 times out of 10, we can go point back to the agreement, point back to the franchise and say, look, they told you right here. And they say, well, I didn't read that. I didn't know I should get it. Almost everything that's important is going to be disclosed to you up front. And so the best advice I can give is take the legal documents that are given to you and read them and understand them, because 99 out of 100 problems can be solved by work up front, understanding what you're getting into.
Perfect. I appreciate that information. That's great information. Always have a franchise attorney look over your documents before you sign them, because it's a long-term commitment. Probably easier to get out of a marriage than get out of a franchise agreement or something like that. So that's what I tell my people anyway. So always get a franchise attorney, never have you over on that one. So anything that I left out, anything that I missed that we should go over, in your opinion, Houston?
No, I mean, this is an exciting time to be getting into franchising. It's a great model. I work with people every day who are getting out of their corporate jobs, who are getting out of other models and getting into franchising. It's exciting to see them get into it, exciting to see them grow. And like I said, I get the clients I get on the back end who things have gone sideways are almost never the people who I've worked with on the front end. So let's get in on the front end, understand what we're getting into, and make this thing rock and roll.
Perfect. Well, if you need to get a hold of Houston, his name is right up there. Just look up Barnes Law or give me a call and I will introduce you to Houston. Always have a franchise attorney, not just any attorney, but a franchise attorney look over your paperwork before you sign those documents. Thank you, Houston. I appreciate your time today, sir.